If you have even one picture hanging in your home, then you're going to want to watch this video. I'm Vivien, and today we're going to look at 5 mistakes that most people make when hanging artwork or mirrors in their home. One mistake I see time and time again is people hanging their artwork and mirrors too high. It's time to bust out the measuring tape because there is a magic number that you can use every time to make sure that your artwork is always hung correctly. The generally accepted rule in interior design is that you want the center of your artwork to be hung at approximately 57 to 60 inches from the floor, or 145 to 150 centimeters. So this is considered to be the standard eye level. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. Like for example, if you're a family of really tall people, then your eye level is going to be a little higher. So of course you can compensate for that. And of course you can go a couple of inches higher or lower depending on if you have higher or lower ceilings. People sometimes panic when they hear this rule. They're like, oh my God, what if I have 20-foot ceilings? The rule stays the same. The artwork should still stay at the standard eye level. So when in doubt, the 57 to 60 inch rule is always a good place to start from. The point is that hanging your artwork at eye level will connect it better to the other elements in your room, and ultimately this means that you're going to get to enjoy it more. So what if you have a gallery wall? Well, the exact same rule applies. If you have a grouping of pictures or photos or things hung on the wall, you want to treat them as a single item. So basically, again, the center of that grouping should be at 57 to 60 inches from the ground. Your eye is going to treat them as a single thing anyways, so you want to treat them as if there were one single piece of art. Another place where people tend to hang their artwork too high is above things like sofas and sideboards. So fortunately, there's a rule for that as well that you can turn to if you're in doubt. So when you're hanging above, for example, a sofa or a sideboard, the bottom of the artwork should be 4 to 6 inches from the top edge of the furniture. Hanging your artwork with this distance is going to ensure that the artwork maintains a connection with the furniture around it. You might need a little more clearance behind something like a sofa. Some designers actually recommend up to 12 inches. So, just see what works best for you. Hanging artwork too high is a super common tendency. It's one of the most common mistakes actually that people make. So if you're looking around now and seeing that you've also made that mistake, don't feel bad. It's super easy to correct, and it is worth correcting because it will make a big difference in your space if you correct it. So next up is getting the scale wrong. There's nothing worse than hanging a tiny little picture on a gigantic wall. It's just going to get lost. Now, I want to caveat and say that there are some designers that intentionally do this, and you can pull it off, but you have to be very intentional about it, and the rest of the room is also going to have to work around that aesthetic. If you're dealing with a big empty wall and nothing around it, generally you're going to want to go as large as you can with the artwork. The bigger you go, the more of a statement it's going to make. And hey, listen, I know artwork can get so expensive, especially if you're going original and you're going big. But fortunately nowadays, there are a lot of ways that you can get around this. You can still bring large artwork into your home that is not going to cost an arm and a leg, and it's still going to make a really big statement. So some of the ways that I like to do this are, obviously I like to paint my own pieces when I can, but not everyone is able to do this. I get that. So what you can do is you can take your own photos and you can have them printed large scale for quite cheap at places like Staples, or you can buy printables off places like Etsy for a few dollars, and then just go get them printed large scale. It only costs $15 or so. And then you just throw them in a cheap IKEA frame. My favorite right now is actually the Lumbican frame. It's got a very clean, simple profile. And that's a very quick and affordable way to get personalized statement art up on your walls. You don't have to have original artwork in your home if you can't afford it, and it's better to have something on the wall rather than nothing. Anyways, I went completely off track there. Let's get back to talking about scale. So if you're hanging artwork above your furniture, one rule to keep in mind is you don't want to place a large piece of artwork above a smaller piece of furniture. Also, you don't want a teeny piece of artwork above a huge piece of furniture. The correct ratio is for your artwork to be 2/3 of the width of the piece of furniture that it's hanging above. One last thing about scale. If you're hanging a very large piece, you also want to make sure that you actually have enough room to view it properly. Larger things typically need to be further away from the eye in order to view them properly. You don't want to be feeling like you're viewing your piece like this, right? That's nobody wants to feel that way. So make sure that your room is set up in a way that will actually allow for viewing a large piece of art. Another super common mistake, oh hi Siggy, is to hang multiple pieces of artwork too far apart from each other. The rule is if you're hanging multiple pieces of artwork on one wall next to each other, again, you should be treating them as a single piece of artwork. Good spacing between artwork is generally around 3 to 6 inches or 7 to 10 centimeters between each piece. And while we're on the topic of spacing, another thing that you want to avoid doing is having inconsistent spacing between your pieces. If you have inconsistent spacing between your frames, the look is just going to be unrefined and chaotic. Even if you're doing a more eclectic type gallery wall with different types of artwork and frames and stuff like that, you still want to make sure that the spacing between each frame or piece of artwork is consistent to keep everything looking neat and tidy and professionally installed. I feel like I've heard the story of artwork falling down far too many times. So this is something that I want to bring up because you just might not think of this when you're hanging your artwork. So always make sure whatever you're hanging on your wall is not going to fall down. This is especially true for any piece of artwork that has like a pane of protective glass or a mirror or even a TV. So please make sure when you're hanging your artwork that you're using methods that are going to support the weight of the piece. And if you're not sure, you can hire someone, like hire a handyman, woman, person, whatever's politically correct, and they'll come and do it properly for you. The right frame can really enhance a piece of art, whereas the wrong frame can become a big distraction. And there is a ton to be said about framing. Like I even worked in a framing store about 1 million years ago, so I know a little bit about framing. This tip will rub some people the wrong way because really your frame should be all about enhancing the artwork that's in the frame. But the truth of the matter is, yes, you want your frame to be in harmony with your artwork, but ideally you also want your frames to be working with the rest of what's going on in your interior as well. They can't be two separate things. If you've got an eclectic space and you're mixing and matching a bunch of different types of frames, you're gonna be fine if you're going the eclectic route. But generally, if your room is like following a specific type of style, then you will want to kind of make sure that the frames that you're bringing in are also meshing well with the design style that you're using in your space. Things that you're going to want to consider are whether or not to go with a wood frame or a metal frame. And then the color of the frame will be another factor. For a more restful look, you could try and keep your frame colors all the same or similar. And if you're really feeling stuck, as a tip, I would say modern, more abstract pieces or like black and white photos tend to pair well with the simplistic nature of a metal frame, or it can be a wood frame with a very simple profile. This type of look can work well in a more contemporary space. And more ornate, maybe like chunkier frames can work with more traditional paintings or pieces of art. Art and frames like that might sit better in a more traditional or eclectic interior. This is just a general guideline, but I would feel free to like experiment and just try and picture what would work well in the space that you already have. Moral of the story is, if you've been living in a home with empty walls, stop that. There's nothing worse than empty walls. What hangs on your walls is a huge part of what gives life and character and personality to your space. So if you've been afraid up until now of like doing it wrong, hopefully these tips have helped you in some way and will give you the confidence to hang that gallery wall. An empty wall is way worse than an incorrectly hung picture. You can always fix the way your artwork is hung, so I say go for it. Thanks everyone for helping me reach 75,000 subscribers. I see you and I appreciate you. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.